Hello everybody, welcome to this open courseware dedicated to the hydrometallurgy of nickel ores and more precisely to the development of such processes. My name is Yves Lequesne, first name Yves and family name Lequesne. I am French, you hear that with my very specific French accent. I am working for ERAMET. I have more than 30 years of experiences in hydrometallurgy development, R&D, and at the present time I am in charge of the R&D program at ERAMET Research, the research center of the ERAMET Group. The ERAMET Group is a mining and metallurgical group, company, involved in nickel metallurgy, manganese metallurgy, and alloy production. Why this open courseware? The main reason is that some years ago, in the framework of nickel production and nickel development, we have done a lot of tests to compare different processes. We have done tests at lab scale, we have done tests at pilot scale, and we have acquired a lot of experiences. And I would like to share you this knowledge and with this courseware in order to share all the different aspects of nickel processing by hydrometallurgy. This open courseware will be divided in 4 parts. The first step will be a global presentation of the course. Then you will have a specific description of all the different processes existing in the world. The third part will be dedicated to a special process developed by ERAMET, and the last part will be the conclusion of the courseware. The first part, that's the presentation of the project and the courseware. You know, there are 2 different sorts of nickel ores. Nickel sulfide ore and what we call oxide ore, lateritic ore, including 2 different categories, limonite and saprolite. On this map, you can see that the lateritic ore are mainly located in tropical area, as sulfide ores are on the north part and the south part of the world. In this graph, you can see that present production of nickel is mainly coming from sulfide ore. More than 50% of nickel is produced from sulfide ore, and the other 50% from laterite. But if you see the resources, the available ore body in the world, you can see that more than 70%, between 70 and 80% of the resources, of the nickel resources, are in the laterite. And when you see that, you have to know that in this laterite, only a small part are really treated. First, the sulfide ores. There are some main characteristics of such ores. The first one is that the mines are either deep pits mine or underground mine, and it's a very hard rock. To treat this ore, you have to crush it, and after that to recover the specific nickel sulfide minerals by flotation. These deposits are mainly located in very extreme condition area, either in the north part of the world with temperature less than minus 25 degrees in winter, or in the south part of the world, in the desert of Australia, with temperature up to 40 degrees in summer. That's very extreme condition. The second characteristic of this ore is that they contain nickel, but also copper, cobalt, gold, and platinum group metals, PGM. And for some producers, the value is not coming from the nickel, the value is coming from the gold and the PGM. and nickel is only a byproduct of such exploitation. The conclusion of that is that the business model of such ore is completely different from the lateritic ore, and with several underground mines, associated beneficiation plant to increase the nickel content of the ore, and a smelter to produce either nickel matte, nickel sulfide, or a blister copper for the copper part. For the lateritic ore, that's our main topics. So what is lateritic ore? Lateritic ore is coming from the degradation of peridotite. Peridotite is magnesium silicate containing some nickel, and with water coming from the rain and with water, acidified water coming from the degradation of the grass, of the plants, you have humic acid, and you form some acidic water coming inside the ore body, and with this acidic water you leach the magnesium, you solubilize the magnesium coming from the peridotite. You solubilize also part of the nickel content in this peridotite. And on the upper part of this ore body remains only the iron, as goethite is an iron oxide, and this iron has catch some nickel, and you find about 1 to 1.5 nickel content in this kind of limonite. The other specification of the limonite is that it contains some cobalt, and mainly in specific minerals called asbolan is a manganese mineral that catch some cobalt. On the lower part of the ore body you find saprolite. Saprolite is a magnesium silicate, very low in iron, very high in magnesium, and the nickel content in all the upper part has reprecipitated in this saprolite, and you can find very rich nickel ore in this part of the ore body. To give you some example of such ore, we are used to say that nickel is green, and you are right. In this sample you see green part containing nickel, but mostly you find such ore. It's green, brown, some white particle. It's a mixture, and this kind of ore could be more richer than this kind of ore, even if it's green. In some case, but it's very rare, you can find very rich ore, that's garnerite. It's dark green, and there could be more than 15% of nickel in this garnerite. Regarding the ore body, I have some example of samples coming from Indonesia. That's saprolite here. It's a hard rock. You have to crush it to process it. Then on the upper part you have limonite. Limonite, you see, it's brown, and you can. It's a very fine ore. You can crush it by hand, and between the two parts you can have a mix of ore called earthy saprolite. It's rather hard rock. To process this kind of ore, you have to know that the nickel is always contained in the lattice of the magnesium silicate or of the iron hydroxide. And to recover the nickel, you have to destroy this lattice by two kinds of processes, either by pyrometallurgy or hydrometallurgy. Pyrometallurgy is in a furnace at very high temperature. You melt the ore and you destroy completely the lattice. by this melting. And in hydrometallurgy, you dissolve the ore, you put all the components of the ore in a solution. In hydrometallurgy, there are two kinds of processes, either a total dissolution by acid, and you reprecipitate the iron during the dissolution. That's what we call the acid routes. There are another route, it's a mixture of pyro and hydro, with first pyrometallurgy to treat the ore, to reduce some part of the ore, and then to change the phases, and then classical hydrometallurgy to recover nickel and cobalt. More precisely, hydrometallurgy can treat high-grade saprolite with up to 3% nickel, between 2.5 and 3% nickel. And you reduce the ore in a furnace, you transform the oxide in a metallic form, you create and produce nickel, metallic nickel, and iron nickel, and metallic iron nickel, and called ferronickel alloy. Or you can produce a matte, a nickel sulfide. The main characteristic of such processes is that it's very costly in energy. You have to put energy in the furnace to fuse the ore, and the energy, the cost of energy is directly linked to the quantity of ore put in the furnace. The main consequences is that you have interest to treat very rich ore to decrease the cost of energy towards the nickel content. Regarding other part of the ore body, the limonite, first what we call the Caron process. It's what I said before, pre-reduction of the ore and an ammonia dissolution of nickel and cobalt. It's a way to dissolve nickel and cobalt and not to dissolve the iron. The drawback of such processes is that you have very poor recovery in nickel, and in nickel 85% of recovery, and very low recovery of cobalt in the range of 45–50% recovery of cobalt. This process is applied in Cuba, was applied in Queensland in Australia. For also limonite, two other kinds of processes, sulfuric dissolution, sulfuric processes, where you put in solution iron, nickel, and cobalt. You do that in an autoclave under pressure, very high pressure, 35 bars, you see, at 240 degrees C. We call that PAL, pressure acid leaching. And you can also increase the pressure, increase the temperature, increase the pressure in order to increase the speed of the reaction and to decrease the size of the equipment. We call that HPAL, high pressure acid leaching, with a lot of examples in the world. You can treat also a mixture of limonite and low-grade saprolite by two different routes, sulfuric acid processes, with an optimization. First, you treat the limonite in an autoclave at high pressure, and then you can add some part of saprolite, but this kind of processes is limited in quantity of saprolite. The name of such processes is AHPAL, enhanced high pressure acid leaching. The last processes are atmospheric leaching processes we call that JAL, jarosite acid leaching, or Gall-Gussite acid leaching, depending on the way you will precipitate the iron. And the last process is ERAMET process, and the third part of the presentation will be dedicated to these processes. To have a summary of such processes, you see here the ore body, the different kind of ore you will find in the ore body, the fresh ore, rock, the peridotite, the saprolite, and you see here we have written garnerite, but it's very rare, the transition ore, or the earthy saprolite and the limonite. The nickel content, you see, will increase. In the limonite, it's at the level of 0.8 to 1.5%. In the transition ore, you can have up to 4% nickel content, and also in the saprolite, you can have up to 3 to 5% of nickel content. Cobalt is at a level of 0.1 to 0.2% in the limonite, but rather low content in the saprolite. Iron, there is a decrease of the iron, and it's very important. You see, in the limonite, you find between 4 and 50% of iron. It's an iron ore. As in the saprolite, the iron is much lower at the level of 10 to 25%. Regarding the magnesium, it's contrary of the iron. Very low magnesium content in the limonite, 0.5%, and you will increase the magnesium content up to 35% in the saprolite. The conclusion of that is that you have different kind of processes depending on the ore you want to treat. The first processes is ferronickel smelting in a furnace, but it is applied only on saprolite and part of transition ore. You have HPAL, high pressure acid leaching, that is applied only on limonite. And you have different processes that could treat either the limonite and the saprolite with different ratio. Here for HPAL, high pressure acid leaching, you have high ratio of limonite and low content of saprolite. It's the contrary for atmospheric acid leaching, where you can increase the part of the saprolite. Thank you very much. That's the end of the first part of this open courseware, and I will wait you for the next part.